Before we actually build any geometry, let's bring in some images into our Maya scene so that the model that you create and the model that I create are going to match up. And it also is going to help you not have to worry about kind of where to place things and where to put points, but then you can concentrate a little bit more on the techniques that we're using. So this is a great way if you have artwork that you've created to bring this into Maya to be able to use. So the first thing we're going to do is hit the space bar to just be able to see our front and side and top views. And it depends on what images you have. For this one, we've got I think 3 different ones. So I know we have a front and a side view that we're going to bring in. And so to bring in images, all we're going to do, and I'm going to pull this up so you can see it a little bit better. Whatever viewport you want to import the image into, you want to go into that particular viewport, go to View, Image Plane, and let's go to Import Image. And the images that we have are included with the project file. So if you've got that set, it's going to be in the Source Images folder right here. And so we've got pod back, front, and side. So we're in the front view, so we're going to grab the front image. You can see a preview of it here. So let's go ahead and say OK to that. So that brings an image into our viewport. Now if we move around in the viewport, you can see that the image is stuck to the grid, so it can serve as a great guide for us. You can see here in the perspective view where that image plane is located. So I want to scale it and move it around a little bit. The first thing I want to do is scale it. So I want our model to be of an appropriate scale. When we've got that image plane selected, we can come over to our channel box layer editor. You can see here with that image plane shape selected that we can go in and change some of these values. Right now the height and width are what we want to change. So we want our spacecraft, or our little pod, to be roughly about 500 centimeters wide. And so because of the padding on either side of our image, I'm going to make the width and height around 760. Now that's going to make it really, really big. And you can see it makes it so big that we lose even the grid that we've been using. Let's pull this down a little bit. And you can see how big that is here. You can also see the cameras right up on it. So I'm going to select this icon here. This is our camera icon. A little line tells us which way it's pointing. I'm going to hit W, and then I'm just going to move it back and out of the way. So we're working with a larger scale here. I also want to move the image plane back. So I can use this translate to translate it back. You can see here is our grid. I want to make the grid a little bit bigger too, so that when we build our model, the grid's kind of useless if it's that small and we're building at a larger size. So we can always go into our viewport, our display, grid, and go into the options, which is this little box. I'll just make sure it's reset. So this is where it is by default. I'm going to change the length and width to, let's change it to maybe 1,000 units. Let's apply that. Now it almost looks like a solid line here. So let's take our subdivisions down to 1. And you can see that that gives us a much finer grid to work with. And you can modify how many units you want the grid lines to be. I'll go ahead and leave that as is. So now when we create our geometry, which will be at the origin, this image plane will be kind of out of the way. Okay. You can see that here. So now what we want to do is add our side view. So same procedure. We'll go into the side view, go into View, Import Image, and let's bring in the side view. And again, we want to match up the width and the height. So we'll go ahead and put that right in there. And then if we go back into our perspective, you can see how that matches up. And we can move it off to the side. You can see as I move it back, it moves it behind the grid, which is what we want. Behind the grid and from the looking at it from the side there. And so we can bring it in just like that. And I'm going to pull it forward a little bit. And just make almost this kind of virtual cube shape. If you want to bring it up above the grid, you can, but because it's sort of floating, I want to have the center in the middle instead of at the bottom. Or if we were doing a car, we might want it to be sitting on top of the grid. Okay, you can always turn off the grid in here by going into your Show menu. And a lot of times you don't actually need the images in your perspective view. So if you want to turn those off as well, you can come in here under Show and turn off image planes. Let's turn off cameras as well. And then I'll turn the grid back on. And so now we have our images in the front view. You can see it's centered up nicely. And in the side view. So now when we start to build geometry, we can look from both of those views and it will match with the artwork that we've created. That'll help us concentrate more on the tools that we're using and the techniques rather than trying to get an exact match of polygon placement or placement of a vertex and that sort of thing. Okay, so now that we've got our image planes set up, the next thing we want to do is start to build the geometry. And we'll do that in the next lesson by building up just a simple polygon cube and start modifying it from there. So we'll go ahead and do that next.